as a country in terms of offering this fabulous opportunity to as many citizens as we can. So today we're really excited because this has been a labor of love and really a 2-year project that Elizabeth and Davis have been involved in. We want to do a special thank you to Deb Bragg for really pioneering this work for us. So I know that Deb is out there somewhere. And also to Julia Cunningham from ECMC for their continued support of this work. Stephen Payne from Strad, I want to thank him. I know he's coming, planning on being here. So thank you all. CCBA's motto is it takes a village. It takes all of us to push this uphill. And you all have been doing a great job of getting this spread across the nation. So without anything else, please let me introduce Dr. Elizabeth Meza. And Elizabeth, in addition to being a distinguished researcher and instructor at the University of Washington School of Public Policy and Governance, I would consider Elizabeth a friend and somebody who has really pitched in and has helped creating the conversation supported by data and research. So Elizabeth, thank you for being here and thank you for partnering with us on this work. And then her wonderful colleague, Davis Vo, who is also here. Big shout out to Dr. Davis Vo. He just got his PhD last week. So this work I know is very important to Davis, and so we're very excited. So congratulations to him, and he just got his PhD from UCLA, School of Education and Information Studies. So we're excited to have them both with us. So Elizabeth, you're going to start us off here?
I am. Thanks so much, Angela, and thanks everyone for joining us today. And yes, congratulations, Dr. Davis Vo, who was super instrumental in this study while also writing a 300-page plus dissertation, which is on CCB degrees. So you'll all have to look for that, as he's publishing that work. So as Angela said, this is the National Program Inventory. It's done every 2 years. Every 2 years, CCBA works with researchers to take an appraisal of what's happening around the country with CCB degrees. And it focuses on growth in states, institutions, programs, and graduates. So kind of 4 levels of scale of CCB degrees. What happens is CCBA has a list of programs that they keep updated on their website. So you can go and see every CCB program that we know about around the country on the CCBA website. And then every 2 years, we kind of cut that list off at a particular date and run a lot of analysis of those programs. So this the information that we're sharing today reflects all of the programs that we know about as of December 31st, 2025. And we use IPEDS data to analyze those programs. So this builds on the report that Dr. Bragg published 2 years ago along with CCBA called Watch Them Grow. This one is called Still Growing. So every couple of years we update the list. I think we can move on, but I did want to mention, yes, please feel free if you have any questions to drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to keep an eye on those and answer them either during our presentation or afterward if we don't catch them.
Elizabeth, Shelley also put in the chat the national program list, which is on our website also.
I see that. Thank you, Angela. Yeah, so you can go check it out. Now, this inventory, as I said, only represents the programs as of the 31st of last year. But the list has even grown since then. We know there have been a number of programs that have joined since then. So I think we're up to I want to say it's something like 780 some now, something like that. So there have been a number, just the last few months. But We've got 24 here in our inventory representing 214 different colleges. That's a 14% increase since the last inventory 2 years ago, and 763 programs, a 13% increase since the last inventory. And we're over 16,000 graduates from public institutions. That's an important data point to add. We are only looking at public institutions in this inventory. So here you can see the states that are authorizing the degree. 24, there's a few others that are hopefully coming on board soon, but this is what we've got as of the end of the year. So it's important to talk a little bit about how we count a CCB college, because we know that colleges have changed their names. Some colleges that you might consider CCB college, the state isn't part of our inventory. And so what we do is we look at the Carnegie classification of our 214 colleges. And so in the Carnegie classification, 107 of the colleges are actually still listed by Carnegie as associate's degree colleges, even though we know that they have been authorized to offer the baccalaureate degree. 34% of the colleges are called baccalaureate or associate's degree granting colleges. That means that less than 10% of the degrees that they confer are at the baccalaureate level. And then there's another smaller percentage where baccalaureate degrees represent somewhere between 10 and 50% of the degrees that the college confers. So we count all of these types of colleges and do some work to make sure that we're including everyone who we know has been authorized, even if they're not counted in Carnegie as a baccalaureate degree granting college. So I hope that makes sense. But we did write a whole report on the data that you're seeing today. So there's a lot more information in the report published on CCBA's website if you really want to dig into this a little bit further. So we'll start talking about the states now. California has the largest number of CCB colleges. That's kind of a new change. California has really come online in the last few years. Washington, Florida, Texas, Ohio, Arizona has really grown a lot. So all of these states represent some growth in CCB colleges by state. There's a number of states down there that you see on the bottom of the list, which are a lot of them are restricted by legislation in some way to only be able to confer a certain type of degree or in maybe one or two of the colleges in their state. So those are kind of holding those states back, and we think a potential area for growth. So we looked at where these colleges are located in terms of their degree of urbanization in IPEDS. So 37% are in large cities and suburban areas, 26% in rural towns and distant fringe. So those are actually quite remote areas. And then 20% in small cities and suburban areas. And by suburban there, they mean like the suburbs of a small city, right? So if you look at combining the rural and town and the small city and suburban, if you can put those two together, those are still pretty rural areas. Those are actually the biggest category. So that leads us to believe that CCB degrees are really serving a population of students who might not have access to higher education institutions without the CCB degree. But I also want to point out that even in large city and suburban areas where you think that students might have access to a degree, they might not have access to a particular workforce program, for example, nursing or computer science, or some other type of program that might be kind of capacity constrained within a larger institution that may be nearby. So even if there is a college nearby them, this program might still be inaccessible in terms of being able to access it for a large number of students. I'm going to do one last slide before I hand it over to my colleague, Davis. This is a really important slide, though, that I think really speaks to the population of students that CCBs are serving. So if you look at colleges nationwide, you see that only 16% of colleges that confer bachelor's degrees nationwide, in other words, Title IV serving institutions, are minority serving institutions. But if you look at CCB colleges, you see that 58% of CCB colleges are minority serving institutions. And within that group, Hispanic serving, Latinx serving institutions are the largest, really reflecting that growth in California and Texas that we talked about. So I see a great question in the chat from Casey. Thank you, Casey, for this question. Are the counted programs ones that are enrolling students in teaching, or are they programs that have been approved but may not yet be enrolling teaching? Yes, they're programs that have been approved. So they may not yet be enrolling students or teaching students, but we know that they've been approved. And that's just really a counting thing because it's very hard to keep track of when a college might actually start enrolling students or teaching students. So we count them upon approval. We do keep an eye because we know that there are some programs that might be approved and then may never actually start enrolling students. And so those would, if that's the case, where they've been approved, but then we know that actually they never launched, we will move them to a different kind of list on our national program inventory to keep an eye on them, but they won't be included here in the total count every 2 years, if that makes sense. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Davis now because he's going to start talking a little bit about the programs of study. So go ahead, Davis.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me here today. As mentioned earlier, there are over 700 CCB programs throughout the nation. A few slides back, Elizabeth mentioned and showed the number of CCB colleges by state. This slide shows the number of CCB degree programs by state. And you'll notice that states that have a longer history of CCB adoption and expansion have more CCB programs. So for example, at the top there, you'll see Florida and Washington have the largest numbers of CCB programs. The number of CCB programs continues to grow as states approve CCB legislation and or decide to expand their CCB program offerings. And then this slide displays the same information about states and programs through a visual map. Here we can see the geographic distribution of CCB programs. Again, Washington and Florida, on opposite ends of the United States, have the most CCB programs by state. Some states have legislative restrictions on the number of institutions or program types that can be offered, and this constrains the number of CCB programs that a state might be able to implement. And this slide shows the number of CCB programs per college, the average numbers. So the average number of CCP degree programs offered per CCB college is 3.6, with a median of about 2 CCB programs per CCB college. 58% of all authorized CCB colleges offer only 1 to 2 CCB degree programs. We also analyzed the specific areas of study by CCB programs in both 2023 and 2025. This figure reviews that what the most popular programs of study are, with health professions and nursing being the most common. Here and throughout the report and today's presentation, we separate out nursing from health professions, even though nursing is technically under health professions, given how prominent nursing CCB programs are. Business programs of study are also, oh yeah.
Davis and Elizabeth, I was going to say, as we're going through these slides, I think we could have a really robust discussion around and what the implications are around every one of these slides. So I'm hoping that people really do spend some time reviewing the report that you all have authored, because I think there's so much great data in there that helps to support CCB degrees across the country. So thank you. I mean, I just want to highlight how wonderful this report is and how important the data is.
You'll see at the top there that business programs of study are also very popular among CCB offerings. Nursing and education CCB programs continue to grow nationally, given their strong alignment to economic and workforce demand through industry partnerships, licenses, and certifications. We also observed some slight declines in some areas of study. We posit that this could potentially be explained by a variety of reasons, perhaps elevating the need for CCB colleges to ensure that there's sustained enrollment flow of CCB programs prior to implementation, perhaps indicating that there were CCB programs that were approved but never launched, as Elizabeth mentioned a few moments back. So I think there's lots to learn here about the different programs of study available with different CCB offerings. And then this visual in this slide, we also examine the types of degrees associated with CCB programs in 2023 and 2025. Again, we separate Bachelor's of Science and Bachelor's of Science and Nursing degrees to show the prominent numbers of them. But combining the BS and BSN degrees together, we would observe that BS degrees are the most common programs of study among all CCB program offerings. Bachelors of Applied Sciences or Arts are also very popular. And then again, we observe some slight declines in some specialized or niche program areas.
Okay, great. Thanks, Davis. There's some great questions and discussion happening in the chat. I did want to mention, so the how we're measuring those programs is by zip code. So that's so business, for example, is zip code 52. So if a program had that as their two-digit zip code, that's how we're measuring those. So looking at now, kind of turning to graduates. We'll look at graduates over time. So we went way back to kind of the first data point that we had in 2013 and 14, and we see that there are, just 7,401 graduates, and then this year, 16,036. 2021-22 was the largest year, and then there was like a little bit of a dip, and you'll know why, because of the pandemic there, that students weren't graduating quite as frequently in that year. But we do expect this number to grow as so many more colleges are coming online and their students move through the programs. So looking at the graduates by state, you can see that Florida has pretty much the overwhelming majority of graduates, reflecting, the kind of longevity and size of their CCB programs. Followed by Washington, Texas, Georgia, Colorado, Nevada, California, that had the largest number of CCB institutions we saw earlier. We only find 293 graduates to date in California. So we really expect that state in particular to grow quite a bit in the next few years. But yeah, we think all of these states are gonna ramp, not all, but most of them are going to be ramping up. Oregon, I see in the chat, just mentioned their degree approval. No graduates in Oregon yet, but that's one that will be coming soon as well. And this data, I just want to mention, is from 2023, 2024. So that was just the most recent data that we were able to access on iPads. So you might think, oh, there's actually more than that. And there probably are, and that we'll be able to see in the next couple of years. Okay, so now we'll kind of get into the graduates by race ethnicity. So what we can see here is that 40% of CCB graduates that we can see in this data are Black or Latina. That's quite a large number. A little bit less than half are white. 4% Asian, two or more races, also 4%, and kind of the race ethnicity unknown at 2%. So quite a diverse group of students here in terms of their race and ethnicity. And then a new data point that is in this this national program inventory, a kind of brand new hot off the presses data that I don't think has been shared anywhere elsewhere, is this graduates by age. We've long thought that CCB graduates are older, And this really proves that point. So, um, 19% of the graduates are 40 plus, and 51% are at least age 29, or sorry, 25. And 25 is usually kind of what's considered an adult student. So, what we have here then is that 70% of CCB graduates could be considered adult learners. Um, and if we go to the next slide, you can see that that's very, very different in terms of both race and ethnicity and age from all bachelor's degree graduates nationally, that Title IV sample that we talked about earlier. So, looking at the age ranges, especially of the 18 to 24-year-old population, we see that CCB graduates ages 18 to 24 are only 29% of those grads, while they're just a much, much bigger number of graduates nationally. Also looking at the top of the slide of the Latin graduates in CCB programs, and also a more diverse in terms of Black and African American graduates. So it's important to just really take note of the difference in the CCB student population versus kind of the national student population.
Elizabeth, one of the things that we've been saying for so long is that CCBs provide opportunities for a really different subsection of students, and that these students will not necessarily be the student who goes to the traditional university. And I think that what you and Davis have shown here, and that built on Deb's work also, which showed the same thing, is that these are indeed a different group of students who may not have thought of the university, of attending the university, but they are very different students.
Yeah, that's a great point, Angela. We also know, well, this data isn't included in iPads, but we know from work in Washington and some other states, Texas, that the students do tend to be more financially needy than other students, be more eligible for Pell Grants, more likely to have dependents, more likely to be veterans. So there's a lot of other data that supports that it is a different student population. At least when we look at CCB graduates compared to kind of all graduates um, nationally.
So it kind of puts a little bit more doubt when the universities say or show concern that this is going to take our enrollments, and this is really going to hurt our enrollment.
Okay, so we're now moving into the distribution of CCB graduates by major program category and by state. And what's really interesting here is that you can see a couple of different things. One is that the types of programs offered and the graduates that we see are really driven are driven largely in some cases by the types of programs that are authorized to operate in the state. So if we look at California on the top there, we see that health professions and other are the top categories. Whereas if you look at the second one down, Colorado, you see that nursing is really the largest percentage. And so in California, we know that nursing degrees are not authorized to be offered through the CCB degree, whereas in Colorado they are. And so that kind of draws the distinction there. But also, I think the other thing that this figure shows is that CCB degrees are really in some cases driven by the local needs of the local labor market. So in states where the degrees are more authorized across the board, for example, Washington, we see that computer and info support, which is a big industry in Washington, has a larger percentage of the graduates there than in other states. So that really, I think, says to me that that CCBs are really working to respond to local labor markets where they're authorized to do so in the state.
Elizabeth, there's also a question from Michael, who is
Okay.
asking, is there any data available showing graduate ages a little bit in a little bit more detail?
Not in the iPads data. Some of the state specific data sets that are accessible have a little bit more granularity. But that's the only category that iPads offers. Unfortunately, I wish that there was a little bit more too. I would really like to see, the kind of 25 to 30 versus 30 to 40, something that kind of breaks out that category in particular a little bit more. But yeah, no, that's as good as we can get using national data.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I see a lot of people talking about their graduates, so that's great that everyone is expecting these numbers to go up. Okay, moving on to grads by major program category and gender. Not a huge amount of surprise here. We can see that female graduates are looking more like there's a larger percentage in nursing of female graduates than male graduates, and we might also take note that the computer and info sciences and support is more heavily male than female, but that's really reflecting national trends. So not a ton of surprise there, but just wanted to show this just to kind of illustrate the point. CCB graduates do tend to be more female. I don't think we've talked about this, but 65% of CCB graduates are female students. That's compared to about 60% nationally, so a little bit more female dominated in CCB programs. Okay, so the grads by major program category and race. Um, Business is still the top for all the races that we see here. One thing that I think is interesting to point out is the large percentage of Black and African American students accessing nursing degrees. That's quite a bit higher than national figures, so perhaps nursing degrees in particular are providing a pathway to Black and African American students that they wouldn't find otherwise. Um, there are some other differences by race that reflect kind of national statistics as well. For example, a larger percentage of Asians in computer and info sciences and support professions. But these mirror national statistics in some ways, but not in other ways. For example, the Black and African American students in nursing that I spoke about. Um,
Elizabeth, did you
yeah.
see the article? I think it was 2 weeks ago that was talking about nursing is the gateway to the middle class for people who are new to this country. So I just thought that was really interesting and support.
Yeah, one of the legislative bills in California is again working to authorize nursing, and we just know so much about how many students would like to access that. So I hope that does pass this time around. Okay, so we'll kind of move on to kind of some of the key findings here. Um, So takeaways and kind of the summary results. So as we mentioned, 24 states. We find substantial growth continues in states that have been conferring CCB degrees for a relatively long time, such as Florida, Washington, Georgia, and Texas. So that does seem to indicate that states that have been authorizing these degrees are continuing to authorize them, continuing to grow. We don't see any pullback in states, suggesting that that states are finding these to be a valuable asset in terms of their educational offerings. And newer CCB conferring states like Arizona, California, and Oregon are increasing the pace of program adoption, and graduates on track to increase as well. As we mentioned earlier, more than half of CCB colleges are minority serving institutions, 58% are minority serving institutions. Looking at the breakdown of programs, we do seem to find that there is evidence that CCB programs are workforce-oriented programs. We don't see a lot of evidence of kind of like liberal arts or other types of degrees in there. And even in states at scale, the number of programs per institution is somewhere between 4 and 7, actually 7.4 in Florida, I think. So we don't see that CCB programs are sort of taking over the institution. There has been concerns, of mission creep or of really like kind of large scale, programs that might be detrimental to enrollment at other types of institutions. But what we're seeing is that community colleges are being really thoughtful about where these programs are being introduced and the types of programs that are being introduced, and that they really are working to meet workforce needs in specific areas, with healthcare, including nursing and business being the two kind of most popular um, um, areas for programs. As we
You know,
discussed, oh, go ahead, sorry.
well, I was just thinking, two of our major shortage areas, and audience, please chime in on the chat, are education, where, many states are using unlicensed individuals who've been veterans or something else. And then nurses, we're having to import so many nurses, and the cost of that is really tremendous to hospitals. So those are two areas where we could use more community colleges offering both of those baccalaureate degrees. And the universities have been offering those for a really long time, but still we haven't been able to meet the needs of students who want in those programs and also the needs of the communities. So I don't, folks out there, are you finding the same thing? I know Greg Rockhold is probably going to say yes.
He said amen.
Oh, amen. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Um, yeah, we are. I'll move back into the graduates. I think that's where I left off. We are seeing that graduates are more racially and ethnically diverse than bachelor's degree graduates nationally, and that graduates are much older than bachelor's degree graduates nationally. Right now, or as of 2023-24, CCB graduates made up only about 1% of bachelor's degree graduates nationwide, but we do expect to see that number grow. And even 1% is still, definitely a contribution. So we'll be happy to get that percentage even higher. Um, Let's see, I think, okay, looking ahead. So this year, Illinois, Iowa, and New Jersey all introduced legislation in their most recent legislative sessions. None of those bills were successful as of now, but work continues in those states to try and get some authorizing legislation passed. And there's a number of other states that already have CCB technically authorized, but where it might be limited in some way by the legislation. So California, at last count, I believe had 6 bills. Maybe somebody can chime in and let me know what the latest update is on those. But about a month ago, the last I heard, there were 6 bills that were in California aiming to expand CCB authorization in that state. Massachusetts had an expansion bill. Missouri was working on, oh, I might be misspeaking there, but Massachusetts and Missouri were both working to kind of expand authorization in their states. And several other states were exploring CCB options in partnership with our team and with CCBA. We also heard from a number of states that they were not considering CCB authorization at this time, but more focused on transfer pathways. I'll just make kind of a commentary on that, or something that I think is an implication of this data, is that given that we think that that CCB students are a different population and that CCB programs may be serving different workforce needs. I think it would behoove states to explore both, to explore both the introduction of CCB degrees as well as improving transfer partnerships simultaneously. Um, I think.
Great point, Elizabeth. I
Thank
like
you.
that.
Um, okay, just looking at the chat real quick. Okay, great. People are putting in a lot of kind of color around my commentary, so that's wonderful. Thank you all for responding there. Um, I do want to give a big shout out to a lot of the people who are involved in this report. It really has been kind of a big effort from a lot of people. So Angela, of course, we want to thank. And I know that Angela's planning on retiring soon, but she's been such a great steward of this work and a supporter of research through the years. So thank you, Angela, for that. Um, Carmen, who makes sure that the national program list is updated on the website and is it is kind of the starting point of all of this kind of work that we have the list updated. Shelley, who does communications, the CCBA board, who's also been very supportive of research and this work, including Dr. Joyce Hammer, who's the chair, but also everyone else on the board. I want to especially thank Deb. Deb, I don't see you. Where are you? Hold on, I gotta
She's
find you.
she's
She's there.
there.
There she is. Okay, I couldn't see you for a second there. Deb authored the first two CCB National Inventory reports and really did conceive of this whole concept and was kind of the first person to say, hey, you know what we really need? We really need a national landscape. We really need a national inventory. We need to figure out what these programs look like across the country. And so Deb's work has really been instrumental in kind of getting us the bigger picture of CCBs around the country. So thank you, Deb. And yes, and she's a good friend of all of us. Stephanie O'Leary, I want to thank. Stephanie helped to make sure that the list what like that we had all of the different information that we needed to create this inventory. So she was really great. Colleen helped us to format and edit the report that you see online, as well as these slides. Brian Durman got us in contact with a number of state leaders to make sure that the report was accurate and we were saying the right things about the right states. I'm sure Davis probably wants to thank Dr. Cecilia Rios Aguilar at UCLA, his advisor, who was helping him write with his whole dissertation while we were doing this work. And then, of course, the ECMC Foundation, who supported this work. And I want to thank all of you for attending. And I think we can open it up to questions or comments.
Yeah,
Um,
Elizabeth,
yeah.
this never happens when we have such deep work, and we still have time. I mean, I think that says a lot about how you and Davis really packaged this together. But thank you for that. So I'm wondering from the audience, like, what are your major takeaways? What are the things that you heard that are going to support your work? And what else do you think we need to be looking at, or Elizabeth and Davis and Deb need to be looking at as we go forward? What other things will help you make your case and keep this momentum moving? We have a question here. Job placement, Lenora Lambert is asking about job placement after graduation. Is Stephen Payne and ECMC, are they here? Because those are two of the things that we've been really interested in going forward. I know Elizabeth and Deb have done some work on this. Elizabeth, you want to talk a bit about that? Job
Um,
placement.
yeah, so we have looked at labor market outcomes of these degrees in the past. We do find some really positive labor market outcomes. So Deb and I wrote a paper in Education Policy Analysis Archives a couple years ago comparing the wages and employment rates of CCB graduates versus students who had a similar at the six-digit zip code level. I'm getting really in the weeds now. Looking at students who had graduated from traditional universities, as well, and then comparing them to students who had graduated with a CCB degree. We found that CCB graduates initially earned more than university graduates, and that wage difference seemed to kind of level out over time. So we didn't find, really any differences in wages between university and CCB graduates is kind of the bottom line. In similar program areas at the six-digit zip level. There's been some recent work looking at not as big of a sample, but in a number of different states, not just Washington, that from researchers. It's an NBER paper. They found. I think, wage gains between $4,000 and $9,000 between the associate's degree and the bachelor's degree. And I will actually let Davis take this over because this was really a big topic of his dissertation. So, Davis, do you want to say a few words about what you found?
Yeah, I think in the preliminary analysis that I conducted for my dissertation, we were comparing the labor market differentials among CCB graduates versus non-graduates, looking at earnings, hourly wages, and then employment rates, and just consistently through across various quantitative methods, across different model specifications, a lot of fancy stats things. Consistently through, we kind of saw and observed the positive impacts of CCB completion. Um, Across different fields, for different races, different genders, age groups, and so on and so forth. So I think that again supports and aligns with existing research that really speaks to the positive economic impact of these programs. Um, and not just immediate graduation, but we also looked at wage outcomes over time as well.
Okay. Elizabeth, there's a lot of chatter in the chats.
I'm seeing that.
So yeah.
Um,
Um,
Let me talk about there's one that I know that I can speak to, and that is the question on affordability and debt. I just published not too long ago. Actually, Davis, maybe you can show one of the slides that we have further down has our website on it that we didn't include, but it's there. I looked at tuition and fees rates at CCB colleges versus public four-year colleges in those states, and then also compared the cost of attendance. So let's see. It's that one. See where it says affordable bachelor's degrees are available at community colleges depending on where you live? That paper. Go look at that paper. That paper has some information that you might be interested in, and basically what I found is that CCB tuition and fees are much quite a bit lower than at public colleges and universities, but also that the total cost of attendance, which includes financial aid that a student might receive, is lower as well. So that might be helpful.
Yavapai, somebody was asking about 3-year degrees. And Yavapai, I know, has started a couple of those. And are there others? Are there other states out there or colleges out there that are looking at 3-year degrees or have started them? I know that's one of the things Massachusetts is looking at, that might be that's an innovation that's not being offered. So maybe that's what the community colleges can do. So I think that's there. Michael Slonick is asking, do you know much about the kinds of jobs that graduates get? For example, do CCB nursing graduates get the same kinds of jobs as university nursing graduates? As a former dean of nursing, I can tell you that absolutely, yes. Most of your colleges are working hand in hand with the hospitals that they serve. And so these graduates are definitely getting placed in the same kinds of positions with the same salaries and sometimes more because they have more time as being an RN. So yes, not a difference there. Casey Andrew from Oregon, we hear from our university partners, okay, that community college bachelor degrees might not be accepted in universities for graduate programs. Has anyone else heard this um, out there? I have not heard that at all. As a matter of fact, we've got some really good university partners. Some of them are on here that are have really opened their arms up to community college baccalaureate graduates. So we have not heard that. As a matter of fact, I think that is one of the selling points to universities that more students will graduate. Therefore, if you create a good partnership with your university partners, more students can move into that. And there's lots of questions about this. So maybe that's something else that we can look at. Michael Wagner says this is very validating information. And he's talking about in states with non-competition requirements for community college baccalaureates like California. Are you seeing those constraints actually drive innovation in pushing colleges into CTE fields at university have been slower to, I need to get my glasses, slower to develop programs in? I think we've seen that. Um, but yes, the competition, uh, I think California's legislation that really blocks CCB programs if there's duplication is misaligned with the reality of the world. Deb, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I guess I would say this is maybe one of those double-edged sword kind of questions. I think because of duplication and how programs get approved, there is a real science to figuring out how to classify programs in ways that won't, provoke the ire of the universities. And so people are quite creative about, really understanding how programs are really coded. As Elizabeth said, sometimes that this is say that a concern Elizabeth and I share, as we've been doing this research over the years, we do sometimes see are so narrow and so nichey that
Yes.
they don't draw enrollments. And so yes, it's good to be creative. On the other hand, it isn't helpful to create programs that are so maybe current and cutting edge, but they may not actually large enough, enrollment base to sustain those programs. And we may not have as good employment data sometimes on how needed those are. So I'd say be cautious and use the data. These programs
Yeah.
will produce strong outcomes.
I was glad you used the word cautious, Deb, because I think colleges need to be cautious about what programs they start.
Mhm.
Um, and also for all of us, all the colleges need to be cautious about that because legislators use and universities use that data
Yep.
to maybe, color us in a color
Yep.
CCBs in a negative light. So I think that's really important. So I guess my T-shirt would say, "Don't start a CCB program at any cost." And
Oh,
for a very small number of programs, make sure it's really well documented by labor need, ongoing labor need, huh?
yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, So I think this has just been fantastic, Elizabeth and Davis. You've just done some brilliant work there. We want to salute you because I think um, your work will have so many implications. Next week, or I guess 3 weeks, we're going to go to some states that are considering CCBs, and this information is so critical to them you know. And also, I wanted to mention, Deb, your research where you looked at, I love this piece of research, Deb, that where you looked at the different political focuses that the governors had when they started CCBs. Because you mentioned that? I know that is one of my favorites.
Oh, well, these data can be used in a lot of different ways, and the Knowledge Center on the CCBA website gives you a whole bunch more short briefs that Elizabeth and Davis and Colleen and our team has done. One of them that was always interesting to me was because people ask a lot, well, does it matter the politics of the state? And of course, our world is changing, but as we go all the way back to the beginning, what we found when we looked at the party of the governor and the legislature, the dominant party in the legislatures, we found that of those 24 states, it was almost,
I think it was exact.
yeah, something like that. It was very,
12 to
very
12.
close. And if you kind of unpack the arguments, what cuts across them is the need to meet workforce needs and the for community college for
Uh,
students who would not otherwise attend our universities. So those are compelling arguments we saw, regardless
which is
of
on the
your
theme.
political party. And that was important to
Tell me,
know,
tell
I
me.
think.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Well, Shelley is reminding me to number one say, please always join our work. I mean, our work is richer because you all are partnering with us on this. Our work, CCBA's work, is richer because of the depth of research expertise that Deb and Elizabeth and Davis and so many others have. So please continue to support that and look out for some of the things. Also, if I don't say CCBA Center for Knowledge, I would be quite remiss. So please take a look at that. There is so much information there that I think you will find really useful and very important. And also, Deb, it's already May. I need to at least, put a shout out for the conference where you'll get to meet in person Elizabeth and Davis and Deb, and maybe Greg is going to show up this year too, Greg. And the theme for this conference this year, I think, is really important, and it's Baccalaureate Pathways, Solutions that Power Communities. We're always talking about the incredible impact that these CCB degrees have in communities, particularly rural communities. So we're really excited to have that as a theme focus for this year. So let's see. I don't think there's anything else, Elizabeth. Carmen, make
No,
sure you put the link in the chat for the conference. And Elizabeth, any
I just
short?
want to say thanks so much, everyone, for coming. I mean, the work that you all do on the ground in community colleges is so incredible, and we wouldn't have any of these degrees without your hard work and your support of students. And I'm just so grateful to be part of this community. So thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful job. Congratulations, everybody. Davis, do you want to say anything at the end? Dr. Davis Vo, is there anything you'd like to share?
Just thank you for engaging and participating in today's webinar. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the conference next year.
We want to thank our foundation partners who have believed in us from the very beginning and have supported this work, and it has made really, I think, a huge amount of the growth that CCBA has had and the Community College Baccalaureates has had is because our foundation partners, ECMC, Strata, Ascendium, Joyce, have believed in us, and Lumina. So thank you for all of you, because without you, much of this work would not be going on. So thank you.
Okay.
I hope to see you all in February in beautiful downtown Old Town Albuquerque, February 17th, 18th, and 19th. And we'll have wonderful presentations, and we look forward to hearing your work as well. So that'll be great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye.